guys, and welcome to the Cultivate and Keep podcast. Today is a special episode. You have your main one, Jeremy, right here with my good friends
Corey
and Nick.
Nick who?
Nick Loudon.
Nicholas Loudon.
Anyways, this is Cultivate and Keep, where we talk about what it means to be a man as a Christian.
Nice,
and,
dude. You got it.
I got it down, bro. But we're excited to have Nick on today. We're going to talk through the subject and idea of being apathetic. And so we're excited to just kind of dialogue with Nick and kind of pull that apart and kind of see what comes up.
Yeah. So a couple quick housekeeping items. Still working on the /favorites page. So if you go to cultivateandkeep.com/favorites. Nick, have you checked out the favorites page?
I haven't.
Nicholas.
I promise I will.
I
Nick,
spent
we
hours.
Put your name on there, bro.
Blood, sweat, and
you
tears.
Bunch.
You just pull it up and it's just me, and that's
It's
it. He's our favorite.
No, it's
Just
just
Nick's
Jeremy.
face.
Apparently, he's the favorite. So
What are you talking about?
you declared yourself as the favorite.
I don't remember that.
I think we
Anyway,
have proof.
you guys should go check it out. We have a bunch of resources on there. I mean,
Yeah.
just today I was looking at it and I was like, holy cow.
So
more
we're going
than I
to keep
thought.
adding to that.
So-
It's going to be kind of a living page, always being updated. So if you have any ideas or suggestions for us for great books, apps, other podcasts, websites, courses, programs, things that you just think are helpful for Christian men, you can email us or you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all those things. Find a way to get to us. But I think that's it.
Patreon, you want to mention that?
Patreon, yeah. Go ahead.
Patreon.
You tell them.
Well, we have a total of
One.
Patreon supporters.
Dan the man. Shout out to Dan.
Dealing. So if you guys,
Shout out to Foothills.
yeah, if you don't know what Patreon is, Corey, why don't you explain it because you do a great job.
Okay, Patreon is
you
just
got
a
10
really
seconds, though.
Patreon's a really easy way for creators to monetize bonus content. So we have an exclusive podcast feed of life updates, pre-rolls with guests, Q&A, kind of special episodes, and so it's a great way. If you want those extra episodes, you can make a contribution: $1, $5, $25.
But skip the small ones. Go to 25.
Yeah. So $5 will get you the bonus episodes. $1 will get you a virtual high five. $25 will get you on the Hall of Fame page, which right now only Dan Dealing is on. Yeah.
I just realized, Corey, you have a hole in your pants. That's
Oh
kinda
yeah,
funny.
it's Monique hates these pants.
Anyway, I wanted to just reiterate that we are kind of pushing Patreon. Our goal isn't to make money on this. I mean, that would be great if that happens, but the real hope right now is basically to just recoup the ongoing cost of keeping this
So that we can
podcast
reinvest.
going. I've said before, but it's about $200 a month for me and Corey to front right now. So if you feel like you want to help support, Patreon's a great way to do that. And again, by supporting, you get access to extra content. I think that's it. Yeah,
That's it.
ready to rock this.
Amazing. So why don't we explain really quick why Nick is with us? Because
It's a great question.
why are you here, bro?
What are you guys
is
doing?
We love Nick. Nick has been Jeremy and I's friend for about 8 years, and we all went to Foothills Church together, Foothills School together, got to know each other there. We met, I think, in our sophomore year of high school, I want to say. That's when you came to Foothills, right? But the reason why Nick is with us is because, one, he's our great friend, but two, he had a great idea for these episodes. So, explain like kind of how the genesis of this.
Yeah. Genesis, nice biblical
Hey.
reference.
Cultivate and Keep.
But it's a bunch.
Shout out to us.
Okay, no more shout outs, okay?
I think I've used all my shout out tokens for the episode.
Still got the hashtags though.
Yeah, still got hashtags.
Hashtag shout out.
Okay, anyway. I was listening to the podcast. So I was listening to, I think, the episode about turning points. We mentioned that earlier.
That's right.
And I was listening to it and was basically just like really like excited about it. And I remember I was like cleaning my kitchen and like listened to it in my ears and being like, oh yeah, and like having all these ideas kind of running through my head while I was like doing the dishes. And I was like, as soon as it ended, I at the end, you guys were like, hey, if you guys have like ideas for topics, like just let us know. I immediately like, okay, group text. And I was just like, I had a couple ideas running through my head. So this one, Apathy, was like the first one that came to mind, because I felt like it was just like relevant. And I felt like not only have I like dealt with that myself, but like seen that in a lot of like specifically young Christian men, which is like the purpose of this like podcast.
Yeah. So, I mean, why do you think that popped in your head? Like, where did that come from? As in, like, why apathy? I'm just like, why do you think that was just kind of on the front of your mind?
Yeah, I think it's been something that like it's not, I don't want to say it's a theme of my life because that would be a bummer. But it's just kind of like a recurring, like I can have like seasons of my life where I'm doing tons of stuff and I'm like all in and I'm like growing and learning and X, Y, and Z. And then I always like end up falling back into a season of like just what's the easiest thing, and like, am I getting by? Am I getting what I need? And that's it. Great. Got it. And I'm very like, it's easy for me to really want comfort, and that's it. And so I felt it's kind of like I realized now, okay, it's a little bit like I just had a personal, like I felt like this was something that I was struggling with, so I feel like other people should hear about it.
I mean, totally. I mean, I've dealt with that. I don't know if you have, Jeremy, but there's always like the path of least resistance is always the most appealing, and like it's easy to not care, and it's easy to kind of like shut off and shut down. And when you first mentioned it, that was kind of the first things that ran through my head was, I think especially for us, like we know each other, like we met in high school, but I think the high school time especially is when like you're going through puberty and like you're growing up and you're learning who you are, and a lot of times that just results in like shutting down emotionally, and like you just kind of like hide who you are, like you're not sure who you are, who your friends are, how to act, what to say, like what to reveal about yourself. And apathy is kind of like this it's like this safe place where you can just go and hide from everyone else, and like therefore you're safe. But I don't know if that's just my experience. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think that I feel like oftentimes that's kind of where well, at least for like high school boys, like that for me, thinking it's probably when it like started being in high school. It's kind of like you're saying that you have these thoughts, you have these feelings, but almost as if like everyone else is too cool to talk about it or think about it, whatever it is, and so you just like have to go along with that. And I think like post high school, probably more college, young adult life, I feel like you kind of enter back into that season of having more questions or more like things you want to explore in your mind. But for me, I kind of feel like, oh, like, well, all my friends are already like, grown up and like they already know all this stuff. So I can't, talk about these issues, whatever. And so you kind of just fall back into this mindset of almost like not caring, or like, it's easy to kind of pretend like it's okay, whatever. So, I don't think it's like a personal, like selfish thing that Nick wants to talk about. I think, I think it's really underrated. Like it's definitely an issue that we don't talk about. When I was going through the notes for today, I was thinking to myself like, wow, like, yeah, this is definitely relevant. And
like it's a bigger issue.
I need to think about it more often. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And before we go too far in, I'm glad that I think Nick, you read it down, but like, what does apathy really even mean? But you put it on a couple quick definitions. So it's the absence or suppression of passion, emotion, or excitement. It's a lack of interest in or concern for things that others find moving or exciting. It's also could be synonymous with like stoicism or freedom of emotion. But I think especially in the context that we're using it, we're talking about apathy as in like more like an attitude, or like a kind of I don't care like persona that you put on almost, right?
Yeah, like a mentality. And like it's funny because when I like was looking, okay, what is the definition, and like what is the first thing I even think of when I think of apathy? Because originally I had the thought and I texted you guys, but when I sat down to like really think about, okay, what's important to me about this topic, my first thought was like, I thought to when I was in high school and I was like with the basketball team, like hanging out, and they're like talking about something, and they're like, I don't care, and I'm like, yeah, I don't care about anything either. Like that's almost like it's cool to be like lackluster and like just not care about stuff. Yeah. And like it's almost like it's like a pride issue of like I'm not willing to care about something.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting because especially you came in, your situation was a little unique because you came into Foothills in your sophomore year, and you really only knew 2 people.
Yeah.
And so then you were all of a sudden like, basically the first couple of weeks of high school, right? Now you're joining the basketball team and you have to make new friends and join a new team. And like, I mean, obviously like you're only going to go through that experience once, but that could also translate to so many different situations of like new work or new friends or new city or new family. And like just immediately you feel like you have to you have to fit in, and like especially for basketball, maybe it's even sports in general, but like no one cares, and like it's just sort of like a thing of like, I don't care about anyone else, I only care about me, and like it's funny that I only do things that are easy, and it's funny that like I have bad grades, and it's like normal, you know what I mean? But like just sort of like the culture of it.
Yeah, it's like when you're like in that developmental high school, college age, it's like the most important thing is like, I mean, a lot of us, the most important thing is acceptance.
Oh yeah.
And like being accepted either by a group or a specific person or authority. And so we go into situations and we're willing to change our attitude to reflect the other person's attitude. And that's kind of how I ended up like with, like, for example, the basketball team feeling like, oh, like I don't care about stuff, right? Because that was the attitude they took on, and I felt like I had to mimic that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point, thinking about like that's the season of that we are developing and kind of training our mind to think certain ways. And like our first opportunity that we get, as we're developing, the first time it comes up, we're almost being trained to kind of lean back and think, oh, like it's cool to not care or whatever. And so that's our first time that kind of frames our mindset. And then, think about, 5-6 years later, post high school, where it's time to make big decisions and really think through some like big, like life altering subjects. Like we're trained to just not care. We're trained to kind of pretend like we don't care, So I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And one of the other things I thought about when you talked about that was how I think as boys, but again, as being a man in any other situation that you're in, being emotional or just being vulnerable or like just like letting your personality kind of like show from the get-go is like a huge liability. And when I was thinking about it, I mean, so I've shared a little bit about kind of my growth and my testimony a bit, I think in our testimonies episode, but I talked about how like back in high school, especially like in the early days, I was super shy, super like didn't want to talk to people, didn't have many friends, like didn't want to kind of like show who I really was. And I had like a lot of kind of like, I hate using like self-esteem issues, but it really was kind of like I didn't know who I was. Therefore I was scared to show who I was. And for a lot of people, showing emotion or being who you are is a liability because you can be rejected for it, or you can be made fun for it, or you can be, it can be used against you, and just kind of like, you don't want to be that guy, or like, you don't want to be like the butt of the joke or whatever it is. And so the default, like the kind of safe place that you go to is just to not care and to be like everyone else, because then there is no risk, and you can just kind of coast and kind of fly by without having to worry about that.
Yeah, it's like fear. Like fear keeps you in a box, kind of. And a lot of times that results in apathy. I think specifically in men, more than like in women.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, so I agree. I think it is specifically in men, but why do you think it's definitely men, like more than women, maybe? Or like the whole apathy issue?
I don't know.
Well, I this kind of brings up a point I wanted to talk about. So we talked about apathy, like in this context, being like an attitude. And so there's like attitude or apathy towards like people or towards like objects or things in our life, you know? And I think for men, it's definitely easier to be apathetic, or just not caring towards like stuff. And I think when it, and I would say people as well. I mean, just towards people. And I think for women, it's probably, they're going to be more natural, I think, compassionate than we are. And I think that's like the opposite of apathy. And so they would probably be more on the side of towards like stuff, you know. But for men, so why do we suck at both, basically, is the question.
Good question.
I don't know. I mean, I think that my first response was, when you asked that, in my head was thinking about the culture, I guess. And I was thinking when I was in high school, like what was cool? Well, it was cool to not care. Like that was kind of like what we did. Just like, oh yeah, like, I'm tough, like whatever. And that was kind of, like I keep saying, like that was for me, like ingrained in my mind, just to like not care about stuff. And I think it's because the idea of, if I do care, if I show that I'm excited, if I show that I'm like interested in something and it fails or I fail, then I feel like I'm disappointed. But I think if you have the guard up, if I don't care, it's like you can't get hurt, and there's nothing that you can risk, you know?
Yeah.
I think that it also has a lot to do with like the way that sin plays, like how sin actually like manifests itself in people. So like in my mind, like how God's created things to be, sin like puts them in flips it on its head, you know. So like for men, it's like we are called to like certain responsibilities and to be certain, like, you know, obviously like providing for others, and there's like leadership, and there's so many things tied to like what men are called and meant to do, that like apathy in a lot of ways reflects the opposite of that. So our flesh like kind of defaults to that, like not doing what God has called us to do.
Wow.
So I don't know, that's just what came out, like why men versus women, where anyway.
Well, that's very true because well, quick question, have you read Wild at Heart? Just curious.
Yeah, when I was like 17. So
okay.
I don't think we can let
fresh.
people on the podcast unless they've read that book. That's like
Is that the
That's not
rule?
true.
Did Jeremy
It's not like
Chan
it's a
read it?
perfect book either. But the reason why I asked that is because he kind of gets into detail about like what does it mean to be a man, and what makes a man, and like what are all the kind of unique characteristics of a man versus a woman. And he talks a lot about how like the destiny of a man is to lead and to be responsible and to provide. And I don't think I would have made that kind of connection if you hadn't said it, of like apathy is like the opposite, or like the rejection of leadership is the rejection of responsibility. Like I don't care about leading, you know, you can go wherever you want. I don't care about, you know, providing for you, you can provide for yourself. Or I don't want that responsibility, so I'm not going to put that on myself, and I'm just going to blanket myself in this apathy so that I don't have to feel guilty about not leading or not being responsible or not providing for someone.
And it's like I feel like it's like a rabbit hole. Apathy's like a rabbit hole sin that like you start at being like, oh, like, okay, I'm denying responsibility, I'm denying leadership, I'm being apathetic, and it rabbit holes into like it manifests itself in, you know, other forms of sin, and like how you're treating others and how you're, you know, responding to whatever, you know. I feel like it just kind of like it brings about other sin too. But
yeah, no, that's super interesting. I wanted to also get into, well, I think we're touching a little bit, but like, what is apathy rooted in? Like,
yeah, I was going to ask that.
I think it's a good segue, but like, why, like, what's the root cause? Why do people get apathetic? I think is what we're trying to get to.
Well, so from when I was going through the notes, I was kind of thinking for myself, like, so for me, when I'm apathetic, where does that start? And I don't know why I keep going back to like high school, but for me, I thought of the idea of, when I think of like not caring for something, I think of it as a way of like self-protecting myself, and like I just do away with any possible chance that I'm gonna get hurt. And so I think like for men, like I think of like that stereotypical like picture or idea of like a little boy that's excited about his new toy or his new idea. Dad comes home from work and it's like, Dad, look what I built. Dad, look what I found, whatever. And, you know, Dad is too tired to care, right? Or, you know, Dad just walks away. And I think again, that's like a stereotype, but I think a lot of us have those types of experiences with our fathers. Or I was even thinking about like with friends, like what's the time like we probably all can think about like being excited about something, sharing it with a friend, and that friend like lacking interest. And I think that more than we realize,
laughing at you.
yeah, and more than we
turning
like
it around
can think about, I think that does like hurt, and I think that it causes us to self-protect. And I think for men, like an easy way is just kind of backing back into that attitude of not caring. And so like, what's the root cause? I think for a lot of men, it's that right there. I think it's from hurt that we've experienced, and like wanting to protect ourselves.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, so I wrote down like the exact same things. Like I think for a lot of people, I don't care because I can't afford to be hurt anymore. Like it's always kind of rooted. And again, to make another Wild at Heart reference, he talks about in one of the chapters, what's it called? The wound, I think it is. But he talks about how every man carries with him a wound, and usually the wound is from a father. But I think for everyone, like we're all naturally broken people, we're sinful people, we're fallen, and we're not, we're kind of a broken version of what we should be. And we carry around this rejection and this hurt. And then when those things do hurt, or then they're used against us, apathy again is like this shield of like, I'm not going to let anyone see this hurt or this rejection. I'm just going to like shield myself from letting that thing ever happen again. So like, you know, like if we're using the example of the dad, and, you know, maybe you're a boy and he comes home and you want to show him something and he says, no, like I'm too tired. Like you're going to be very discouraged to do that ever again, because you don't want to risk that fear of being rejected again.
So the next time you have an idea, rather than hey dad, look at this. It's no, it's fine. Like not a big deal. It's not
Yeah.
that cool.
Or like, I'm not going to build something ever
I think
again.
a big thing is like we don't realize that we're taking on this attitude of not caring. I think it's like an internal thing of like we don't even like bother like going after it. Whatever it is that we're excited about, we just don't even bother really engaging our mind there because again we don't want to risk being hurt. But it's not like a
decision.
we don't really like choose that. It kind of just happens.
Yeah.
But I think as we're talking this through, it's kind of I'm realizing, oh wow, like this actually is a really prevalent.
Prevalent.
Hard word.
My bad, guys. But yeah.
Yeah, it's like a base state. Like this is just like how it is. It's funny because like, okay, so I was thinking about this recently. Like how do I see it like manifest in my life? Like how did it start? And then so I had the thought for the like, oh, this is a good idea. And then like during this past like couple weeks, I had to go to urgent care. Here's a random little story, but it's relevant. Trust me.
Yeah.
I had to go to urgent care, and the guy who is like, I guess he's like nurse or whatever. He's like, okay, sit on the table, and he's like wrapped the little like blood pressure thing around my arm, and he's like, checking the blood pressure and count. I don't know how they do it, but he's like, looks at me and he's like, do you run a lot? And I was like, do I run a lot? No, look at me. No, like I don't run a lot. And he was like, oh, okay. Like you got a really like low resting heart rate. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm just like super chill all the time, like really relaxed. And then it got me thinking like, I feel like that's me actually. Like I always wait until like the last second with things. And like, I'm like, stress does not start building until it's like it's D-Day. Like it's happening.
Right,
like
right.
there's no stress until that moment. And so I'm like, oh, like it'll work itself out. And so I think it's kind of like my base state is very like relaxed and like I don't have a lot of like I don't feel a lot of stress. But then I was like, but how is it like manifested? But I feel like really at the end of the day, like it's like selfishness and my personal like deep desire for just like comfort and like what's the most comfortable thing for me to do, which is like bad. It's a bad thing.
Well, that what makes me want to ask. So how has that affected your marriage? Because I know that while you can be very calm, I'm assuming your spouse Brittany is not that way. Like not that she's not calm, but meaning like she wants to get she wants to get things done.
Shout out to Brittany.
Yeah.
Right. And I know you being the type of like, oh, it's fine. I know that.
Yeah.
As you're saying that, I'm like, yep, that's Nick. Like, so how does that affect you guys?
No, definitely. Like it's the thing is like, and this is like marriage in general, it's caused really good and really difficult things. Yeah. So like
just extremes.
Yeah. There's times where it causes conflict where Brittany has said, hey, like I need you to do this, like please. And I'm like, okay, great. And like, I just forget about it. And I'll maybe remember at some point and be like, it'll work itself out. Like no stress about it. And then I let it build up to the point where she's like, hey, like I've asked you to do this, like, and it causes a problem. Where other times it's like, it's helpful because it really balances out where she feels like she's too much in that direction. I'm like, hey, like we're all right. Like calm down. Like I feel like marriage is a purifier. So it's really helped in some ways, but also like it has provided negative things because it's my like base state. Right. So I feel like for me, shying away from any responsibility that I have is always going to be not what I'm called to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think also speaking as a married man, I think a big part of it too is like, man, maybe I should care about this a little bit more, or like, ooh, like, this kind of big deal, like really isn't affecting me that much, but like, maybe that's not a good thing. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's not a good thing that I'm not so worried about this thing, or that I don't feel so bad for this thing, or I'm just not as like empathetic in general. Like I can't like connect and sympathize as much as I want to with my spouse. But I think that goes even just for relationships in general. But when you are apathetic, it's just like this disconnect. Like you're kind of at a very extreme level, it's kind of a blank stare. Like you don't care about anyone at all anymore because you just don't care, and you don't even necessarily care about yourself. And then on the opposite end, like you're so like crazy intent on everything and everyone, and everything freaks you out and everything gets you excited. And you're like so out there that, you put yourself out for risk, and you're kind of you make your emotional a liability. But I think the point I wanted to make was, I think a lot of men especially maybe wonder, like, why don't I care more about this? And like, why aren't I as a factor? Like, why don't I feel this thing that like I'm supposed to be feeling? Like, why aren't I sad anymore? Why aren't I excited anymore? And I think it comes back to just like this apathetic kind of rabbit hole that people get down.
I think it affects their view of themselves, their self-worth, because they'll be like, oh, they'll feel really apathetic about a variety of things and see someone else like being very, like productive, and they're like trying, starting a business and like just doing different things, and they'll just think like, I'm not that. Oh shoot. Okay, I'm never gonna be like that, and it really affects the way that they view themselves, and obviously in a negative way.
I was thinking apathy might also have some sort of root in like a lack of vision and purpose. And again, going back to Wild at Heart a little bit, but we just did the Visioneering review, which this episode will be after the Visioneering review. So go back and listen to that one. But this whole book is based on this idea of the vision that God has given you for your life, and essentially how to craft a vision for your life, and then like making it become a reality, and like letting God's vision for you like be something that's real and a real part of your life, and like how to do it. But I don't know if a lot of men, and especially Christian men, have like a real strong like vision for the life. And one of the things about visioneering was like visioneering is, I think the main three were like inspiration, conviction, and like motivation or something like that.
Equals
visioneering.
Yeah.
But I think a big part of it is like, if I don't have like a vision or some sort of purpose that I feel like I have to work towards, then like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Why should I care? Like, what is it to me if this thing doesn't work out, or this person doesn't like me, or I have this problem in my marriage, if there's no point to it? Like, if I don't have a vision for what it should be like, then there's no reason to care and like be hurt or feel guilty about it at all. And it reminds me of so Psalms 138:8, since I'm the designated verse reader,
Yeah.
says, what is God? Oh, so this is a note. I said, what is God's attitude towards apathetic? And then Psalms 138:8 says, the Lord will fulfill his purpose for me. Your steadfast love, O Lord, endures forever. Do not forsake the work of your hands. And I think a lot of it, like, how do you kind of, maybe we can get into like, how do you rejuvenate maybe some of like, or how do you get rid of the apathy? What's the opposite of apathy? Like care, purpose, compassion, empathy. Like realize that God does have a vision for your life, and does have purpose, and does have things that he wants you to accomplish, and like don't forsake his plans for your life, and don't forsake the things that he has for you, and that you're not doing because you don't care, or because you're trying to shield yourself from being hurt or taking a risk. But maybe we can move into like, I don't know, Nick, for you, like how you felt like you've overcome some of that apathy.
Yeah, good question. Not fully. So
No, never fully.
Just as like context, if anybody knows me and they're like, oh, Nick's really lazy. That I feel like I still like obviously don't have it figured out. That's why it came to my mind. But I think that for me personally, like overcoming it, usually like my first thought is like, oh, tomorrow I just won't be like lazy. I'll just like, okay, tomorrow I need to be more productive. Or I'll try to put like roadblocks in my way of like, usually this like small thing is what puts me into a state of like being apathetic or being lazy with a specific thing. I'm going to remove that opportunity and put like a roadblock in instead. And like, okay, now I have to do this, which will cause me to do, I kind of put like physical parameters around my day to try to, and this is more like day to day, like productivity.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's tougher to think like, I don't know how, like for being a Christian, right? Like, how do I become not apathetic, like in my walk with the Lord? For me, like I feel like I haven't explored that. I haven't explored that idea enough in my mind, or like actually, like I feel like I'm very like in routine with how I do it. Like I read my Bible and I pray and I go to church and I serve in these ministries and I'm good. Like I kind of check the box, which is like, we talk about that all the time type of thing. But it's like, I feel like there's always areas that I'll feel apathetic in some way that I need to just really focus on and just grow in.
Yeah. About, like how to do away with, like being apathetic towards like the church or like towards, the Lord. I was talking about this last night with Connie. But I think an easy way to develop apathy is when we like pull away. So when we stop, going to our weekly like home groups or small groups or even Sunday mornings, or we stop, those that what may seem small but are like daily routines of praying and reading. I think that's like a great way to develop like an apathetic, mindset or heart towards the Lord. So I would say, well, one of the simple answers could be just not doing that. And so, stay committed, stay consistent. If you don't want to go to something, like do it. I think it's a great way to kind of like fight against that apathetic spirit like rising up in you.
Yeah, it's like a practical application. It's hard to talk about practical steps towards that kind of thing. But
Yeah,
that's good.
Connie was saying she was talking with Mike Van Meter about it, and he was saying that for him, like he's decided when it comes to his ministry, he's decided like his few, whichever ones they are for him, it's Youth Venture and his home group are his two main ministries that no matter what he's not going to miss. And so his way of ensuring that is he simply makes them a priority. So he literally just decides, okay, I'm going to be at my home group on Wednesdays and my shift for Youth Venture on Mondays, and like that's it. And so nothing comes between that. And so it's not that he says yes to everything, it's that he's saying yes to those two things, and then that means he says no to other stuff. And so rather than like trying to do everything, he's just designated these two things I'm going to do no matter what, and that means I say no to other stuff.
Yeah, I like that. One of the things that I was thinking about was how apathy sort of like gravitates towards easy things and like convenience and whatever is like most comfortable. So like the opposite of apathy is doing hard things sometimes. So like just challenging yourself and putting yourself in awkward like positions sometimes, or like having the conversation that you've been putting off or don't want to have, or just like pushing yourself to do things that normally you wouldn't talk to someone about what you're struggling with, but because you want to fight against that apathy, then you push yourself and you ask the Lord to help you to go tell someone about what you're struggling with. Or if it's something that you're doing, like I feel really apathetic towards my walk with God, maybe it's just having like a hard conversation with God and like, Lord, I'll just admit like I'm not feeling it. Like I don't have a lot of motivation to read my Bible or to pray, or maybe like I'm just not feeling it, but like I'm going to face that, I'm going to admit it, and then I'm going to like ask for help on it. So even just like doing hard things and challenging yourself is a big way to fight it. I think another way too is just to, I don't want to say, I'm trying to think how to phrase this right, because I don't want to be like super like Joel Sargent Christian man, like get off your lazy butt and do stuff, but like
tell him, Corey.
Do hard things, Corey.
Do hard things. I'll just leave it at that, because I think if we're called to be leaders and protectors and providers, at some point you just have to start doing. And if you're just going to like wait to start caring and you're just going to wait to start like feeling motivated, it's probably never going to happen. So you just have to decide and start doing.
Yeah, a friend of mine was telling me about this like ex-Navy SEAL guy that wrote some book. I'm not sure who it is. It's not Jocko. But
it's not
no,
Jocko.
you thought it was. Your face lit up like Jocko?
Are you kidding me? It's Jocko Willink.
Shout out to Jocko. But so this guy's whole mantra is like, does this suck? I'm going to do it. Like, so everything he does, he asks the question, like, does this suck? Is this hard? And if the answer is yes, then he does it. And like one of his books, he tells a story that he once ran 100 miles in one day. And it's like, I guess what happened was he ended up like something super crazy. Like he was defecating on himself and like throwing up. He broke a ton of bones in his feet because like he ran his body like to the extreme. So that's like the far end of what we probably shouldn't do. But
you have to do that to stop being
right.
Apathetic.
That's the answer.
Sorry, guys.
No, but it's just the idea of like, does this suck? That I'm gonna do it. And that's like his whole like mantra that he follows. And so I think for us, like, that's a good thing to ask ourselves. And again, we're not going to go run 100 miles, but like, is this hard? Like, do we want to do it? And if the answer is like yes, then we probably like should do that. I think that's a good question to start asking ourselves.
Yeah, I was thinking also, for me personally, because I've definitely struggled with like being apathetic or being lazy, or like just feeling like, why do I not care? Like, why do I not feel as much as I should? Or why does it feel like everyone else cares a ton and like is very convicted and like has vision for life and I don't? And I think especially like in high school, that was just a big thing for me of just realizing like, and just asking God, give me more empathy, and God, give me more care, and God, give me I can remember specifically like having those moments of conviction from the Lord of, hey, you definitely need to, like, this apathy isn't good for you. It's not getting anywhere. You definitely need to feel more for other people. You definitely need to be more empathetic. And then it was just like, okay, great. Like, help me, give it to me. Like, give me more empathy. Like, let me feel the empathy that you have for other people and like work through me. And then I think over time that definitely, I can remember like that gave me the courage to go start praying for people and to get involved in leadership at the church. And they give me empathy to like really actually sympathize with what people are going through. And it's not going to be like an immediate change, but so it's not going to be like a snap of the fingers kind of thing that happens overnight. But as you continue to ask the Lord for empathy and for sympathy for other people, and he's going to give you that compassion, then you can trust that it is going to happen, that that apathy is going to dissipate, and you're going to have the empathy of the Lord and really be able to care and embrace the vision and conviction that he has for you. So, Nick, maybe just to wrap up, do you want to read that Revelation verse and talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. When I was just kind of like doing some like thinking about this topic and doing a little bit of biblical research, I guess, this is a verse that I came across. It's a fairly popular verse, so I'm sure many of you have heard it, but it's Revelation 3:15-16. It says, I know your works. You are neither cold nor hot. Would that you were either cold or hot. That's such a weird phrasing. So because you are lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spit you out of my mouth. So it's just basically like the Lord saying, I would rather you be cold than lukewarm, which is just kind of like a powerful way of thinking about it. And it really like puts perspective on the idea of apathy and being lukewarm.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, it's better to be like, I don't know, maybe this is a little out of context, but I feel like the Lord's almost saying like, it's better to care a lot about the wrong things than it is to not care at all.
Yeah.
So be hot or cold, but like, don't be lukewarm. Don't just coast and be sympathetic and not care about the things you're doing, but in whatever you do, have conviction and have care and have empathy for what you're doing, and not be apathetic. Yeah. Would you agree?
I do.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for listening to this episode. You can let us know what you think by leaving us a 5-star, preferably 6-star rating on iTunes.
If you can figure out how to do it.
If you can.
Yeah.
We're petitioning iTunes right now, but we need those 5-star in order to ask for the 6-star. So give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. You can follow us. Check us out on the web on cultivateandkeep.com. You can find us other blog posts and online community and other good stuff there.
Or just stealing the show right now.
Just
Can I get in the game, Coach?
Yeah, I'll put you
bro.
in.
Where should I pick up on?
On Patreon. Patreon.
Anyway, please like and follow us on all forms of social media,
especially Instagram,
preferably the IG. What up? Join our Facebook community, our Facebook page. We don't often talk about that, but join that. Other than that, I think we are ready to rock.
All right.
Boom,
Thanks, Nick.
Boom, boom.
No, I can't start the music until...
Boom, boom, boom.